Don't look now, but the Minnesota Twins have more RBIs than anyone else in the league when the bases are loaded. Hello and welcome once again to another episode of the Twinkie Town Tavern. This is a Minnesota Twins podcast, where the beer is cold, the Twins talk is hot, and the stools are always open. I'm your host, Josh Kolojeski, inviting you to grab a drink, pull up a chair, and let's talk about this Twins 7-3 win over the Detroit Tigers. Here's what happened. Joe Ryan was dealing early, throwing an unhittable sweeper and an unhittable knuckle curve to get Tigers hitters waving on pitches throughout the first couple of innings. Minnesota loads the bases in the second inning, tale as old as time, with no runs coming in. Minnesota loads the bases in the third inning. No longer a tale as old as time. A sacrifice fly by Victor Caratini, followed by back-to-back RBI singles from Matt Wallner and Royce Lewis, puts the Twins up 3-0. Ryan looking for a shutdown inning in the fourth, but Brooks Lee ruins that. He flubs a grounder on the first batter. Ryan hangs a fastball a couple hitters later to Colt Keith, and the Tigers are on the board with that RBI double. More middle infield malpractice in the inning when Zach McKinstry dribbles a slow ball past the heavy-footed Luke Keyshaw to drive in two, and just like that, we are tied. However, a two-out rally in the next half inning gets Trevor Larnach to first before Keishel hits the ball out of the park so hard that the man in the front row who caught it got knocked off his feet and into the metal bleachers, creating a clang that echoed throughout the cavernous, empty Target Field ballpark. Twins up 5-3. Ryan works around a one-out double thanks to an ABS challenge in the fifth and leaves in line for the win after striking out 7 and allowing 3 runs on 3 hits and 3 walks in 5 frames. The much-maligned bullpen steps up, and it allows just 1 hit in 4 scoreless innings. Into the bottom of the 8th, the Twins are walked 3 times to load the bases, and Victor Caratini coming up big again. He drives in 2 with a 2-out single, and Cody Lorison nails down the save in the 9th. Twins score 7 runs on 10 hits and make 2 errors in the victory. Joe Ryan earns his first win of the season, and Minnesota improves to 4-6. They are tied for third place in the AL Central with both the White Sox and the Detroit Tigers also tied for last place, and they're just a game and a half behind Cleveland for first place in the division. Thanks for coming in today. The Minnesota Twins, they're not getting swept. I mean, that's probably the best thing we can say. Every single one of their series they've lost so far, but on the bright side, they have not been swept in any of those series. They've won at least 1 game. They're now 2-2 at home, and their offense is not as completely as inept as it looked against the Tampa Bay Rays during that last game of that weekend series on Sunday. So maybe some things to hang our hat on. I've got 3 major takeaways from this one, and the first is going to be, once again, Joe Ryan and his dominance. Kind of had a bad start sandwiched in between 2 good starts. I think the numbers on this start, the 3 runs in 5 innings, at first glance, you'll look at them and say, okay, that's not that impressive, but the hard hit rate was around where it typically is for Joe Ryan, and really the only problem was elevating a couple of fastballs a bit too high up in the zone, and I think that's just going to be something that you live with Joe Ryan, who is obviously a quintessential fastball pitcher that relies on that over 50% of the time, and when he's not relying on that, it's sometimes the sinker, sometimes the splitter, and he likes to use that fastball up in the zone. The problem is that it is not an overpowering pitch, so it's not going to necessarily blow right by batters. When it does, it's because he's got some deceptiveness to it because of a lower arm angle, some longer extension, so it looks a little bit faster than the 93 miles per hour that it typically averages out at. But when the hitters can get past that deceptiveness and really lock in on it, then they have the chance to do some damage. And that's why Joe Ryan, throughout his career, has kind of been this 3.6-4 ERA pitcher. A good pitcher, not the ace. But last year, of course, he added a couple more pitchers. He made the All-Star game, had a brilliant season. And then this year, it looks like those secondary pitches are really helping him out even more. And we've talked about this through the first 2 starts. His first one, he relied a lot on that curveball, which is now being characterized as a knuckle curveball. And the second start, he didn't rely on that curveball all that much. Today, he relied on the curveball about the same rate as he did in his second start. The difference was that he used the sweeper for just as many pitches as he used the knuckle curve, 11 each, and he was getting swings and misses on those pitches all day long. His release point still high on the curveball, but when you look at just like the tunneling of those pitches coming off of the fastball, that thing bites down at the last second and it just fools hitters. The chase rate, the whiff rate was once again above 50%, which it was not in that second start, but it was here in this third start, and it also, of course, was in that first start. So even though he gives up 3 runs, one of those you can kind of write off as an error by Brooks Lee, who, again, having some major difficulties at shortstop, I think. Even when I'm not sure if he's being aligned and shifted so close to second base because they don't trust his arm, because it seems like no matter who the hitter is, Brooks Lee is shaded very, very closely towards second base, about as close as you can get without being called for an illegal shift. And his arm just does not really have it, so that if that is the case, it limits his range, and he's also not always making the plays when they're there for him to make. And that was the case in the only inning where Joe Ryan gave up any runs. It forced Ryan to pitch out of this stretch right away because it was the first hitter of that inning. He does give up, again, that high fastball, but that's where he's going to attack, and Colt Keith rips it for a double. But he should have gotten out of the inning with a ground ball with 2 outs and 2 runners on, and it would have just been 1 run. However, whether it's misalignment by the Twins, whether it is just some slow range by Luke Keeschall, he's not necessarily known for his defense, but he's got a little bit of speed, not like spectacular speed, but about average to above average for a major league player. Whatever the case is, it just kind of dribbles slowly out. More often than not, that's going to be a ground out. In this case, it wasn't, and because there were 2 runners on in scoring position, it ends up scoring 2 and tying the game. But he settled in once again from there and looked dominant. And if he can continue to throw the sweeper and curve, and now we've seen it look this good for 2 out of his 3 starts this season, that doesn't mean it's a trend, but at least we're starting to move in the right direction. It comes in on the exact same plane as his fastball. He uses almost the exact same arm angle. Like I said, his hand is a little bit more over the top of the knuckle curve when he tosses it, and maybe hitters can start to catch up on that. But the sweeper and the release point with that is about where it is with the fastball, splitter, and sinker. We'll talk about the splitter too, because the splitter looked really good for Joe Ryan in this game. But he ends up just tossing that knuckle curve in these clutch situations, these times when he needs to rely on his pitch, the payoff pitches. He goes to that curveball, and it looks like a fastball coming in before it just drops off. That's why he's getting the chases. That's why he's getting the whiff, because he relies so much on that deception with his fastball, and now he's using that deception off of the fastball, and he is taking the next steps as a certified future ace for Minnesota. I still would like him to use that pitch a little bit more. Obviously, maybe the reason that it works is because he uses the fastball so often, and it just plays off of that and plays with the hitter's eyes a little bit, so maybe he just needs to continue to throw the fastball at the same rate, but I would like to see those pitches featured a little bit more often because of how dominant they are. Again, over a 50% swing and miss rate when Joe Ryan threw a knuckleball or a sweeper. And his splitter also looked pretty good as well. It continued to drop off the table like it does. It was a pitch that he kind of put into his arsenal last season, and again today it just kind of tumbles down, again coming off the same plane as the fastball, and then doesn't take as much of a break, and in fact runs a little bit instead of breaking, and the hitters just are not able to come up with it. So he's getting good movement on all of those pitches. Even his fastball is running a good 1.5 feet. It looks like, according to what Baseball Savant is able to show me on its like 3D pitch modeling, it runs a good 1.5 feet. Instead of like staying straight, instead of breaking to a certain way, it has a lot of run to it, so that if a right-handed hitter is up, it kind of comes in on him. And if a left-handed hitter is up, it goes away from him just a little bit, not like a sweeper or knuckle curve, although the splitter kind of acts like that a little bit. It doesn't get down as much as those two pitches. But right now, he can use that fastball or that splitter with the run to attack left-handed hitters as effectively as he does right-handed hitters, because now they're fishing at pitches that are tumbling away from them, just like a right-hander against a sweeper or a curve would be swinging and fishing for pitches that are tumbling away from them. So another good start by Joe Ryan, 2 out of 3 now. That ain't bad, as Meatloaf said. I think it was Meatloaf. I don't know for sure, but he has gotten off to a good start this season, even if the surface level numbers would not say that it is anything extraordinary. I think with just the stuff that we see, we can project him to have a pretty good rest of the year. Now, whether that whole season is with the Minnesota Twins or with a different team after the trade deadline, that remains to be seen. But for right now, we can enjoy these Joe Ryan outings. Moving on, another takeaway is that the Twins' situational hitting has taken a step forward. And for me, I don't really know if situational hitting and hitting with the bases loaded or hitting with runners in scoring position is something that is an ability or is just something that kind of happens. I mean, you'll hear to hit behind the runners, you'll hear to try and put it in the air, just try to make contact when you have less than 2 outs and runners in scoring position, because they can get a sacrifice fly and maybe you're not swinging as hard and maybe the approach is obviously a little bit different. But this year, for whatever reason, the Minnesota Twins have had smarter approaches and have come up to the plate with the bases loaded or with runners in scoring position, and they're not at the top of the league for most numbers, most rate numbers at least, for runners in scoring position, but they're not at the bottom like they have been kind of in 2025 and 2024, one of many Achilles heels for those teams that prevented them from being competitive, especially late down the stretch. Obviously, the 2024 team was in line to make the playoffs until they had a disastrous September, but it all kind of stemmed from that lack of ability to hit in situational circumstances. And in that case, it was a lot of strikeouts with the bases loaded, so you're just not getting the contact. And then in other cases in 2025, it was just more weak contact and still some of the high strikeout rates depending on who is up at the plate. But regardless of, I think, what the narrative is for the Twins in situational hitting, it's something that they're going to have to shake off, obviously, and fans will need to see this sort of success, or at least league average success, extend out further into the year in order to kind of put that narrative in the past. But right now, that narrative is starting to be shattered. The cracks are starting to appear that the Twins can't hit with the bases loaded and the Twins can't hit with runners in scoring position. They went 5 for 16 in this game with runners in scoring position, so right around a 300 batting average is pretty decent, and they drove in some runs with the bases loaded as well. Now, the first time they came up with the bases loaded in 1 out, they spoiled that opportunity. James Outman with a really bad take on a splitter that was actually pretty good by Casey Mize, but he strikes out, and then a pop out to shallow left field to end the inning. On the next hitter, I think it was Brooks Lee, to end that inning and end the threat of the Twins. But like Derek Shelton said in the post-game managerial scrum, is that credit to the guys. He's proud of them because they created that exact same situation in the next inning. Their next takes at the dish, they came up and loaded the bases again, and this time Victor Carantini gets it started with the sacrifice fly, and then Matt Wallner and Royce Lewis back-to-back RBI singles, like we said in the opening rundown. So you're seeing the team learn, and I think this is kind of epitomized well with Matt Wallner, because Matt Wallner I can't remember if his first step out was in the first inning or the second inning, but he strikes out in that at-bat, and he swings over a split-finger fastball, I believe it was, and Casey Mize comes back and on a 2-strike count again attacks in about the same location, same space, maybe left it a little bit more in the zone than he wanted to, but he throws that splitter, which is a really good pitch, to Matt Wallner. This time he waits a little bit more back on it and adjusts his swing to be able to attack the splitter. And sometimes that's just like guessing and knowing the scouting report. And maybe if it's a fastball in that situation, he just looks foolish swinging underneath it and maybe a little bit late. But he assumed that he was going to attack him with a splitter because of how foolish he looked against the splitter in the first at bat, and got the splitter, attacked the splitter, and ripped it for a single that ended up scoring a run. And then Royce Lewis comes up and gives Minnesota the 3-run lead in the next at bat. So that sort of hitting, that sort of adjustment, I think, is really hopefully helping this Twins offense become a little bit better on the whole, just in general, with those now bases leading to more guys scoring and obviously getting more of those runs, because right now the Minnesota Twins have had more bases loaded plate appearances than any other team in Major League Baseball by a pretty large margin. I think it's 24 plate appearances, and they've now got a league-leading 20 RBIs in those 24 plate appearances, even though they're still hitting, about 250. That's better than they had been in the past, hitting like 150, 160, and not getting all those runs driven in. They're hitting at a league average rate level, and with the hitters that they have, if they can have similar table setting that they had in 2024 and 2025, now you're getting maybe an extra run and a half, 2 runs per game on average, and that puts you in position to win a lot more of these games than you lose. Now, a lot of other things have to go right, but I think the offense is taking some steps forward, and the situational hitting is just really a part of that, and it shows that this offense has a lot of growth potential. I mean, I think we knew that there was a lot of space between where they were at and really any ceiling, even a low ceiling. There was a lot of space between that and the floor, but they're starting to rise up from the floor and get closer to whatever it is that ceiling is, because of their ability to hit with runners in scoring position and now with the bases loaded. And I don't know how repeatable of a skill that is at the major league level, if it just relies on the approach and if the approach makes all the difference. But right now, it's working, and we can hope that continues, so that narrative of the Twins, when we have bases loaded and nobody out, expect to score 0 runs, so that narrative can be a little bit more shattered. So I like what I'm seeing from the Minnesota Twins on offense there. So we liked Joe Ryan. We liked what the Twins are doing at the plate. Now let's talk about the bullpen, because this is just an interesting situation. And I think if we've hit on 2 pieces of good news, even in a game where the bullpen put up good results, this might be some of the bad news, because you put in Cody Laureson, and I think that confirmed that Derek Shelton to start the season is going to go closer by committee, because in the first save opportunity that the Twins had this season, it was Cole Sands. Now in the second, they go Cody Laureson. Granted, some different sort of circumstances, because Laureson comes in the 8th inning when it was a situation. If he had come in the 9th inning, it would not have been a save situation, because the Twins had added 2 more runs, but they still trusted him in a big spot in the 8th inning, down or up just 2 runs at that point, after the Luke Keeschel home run in the 4th inning. Big game by him, and hopefully that can get him started a little bit. But so it's a little bit different than, okay, we put Cole Sands in the 9th, and maybe if that was the case, they put Cole Sands in the 9th, if it was still 5-3, if the Twins hadn't capitalized on the bases loaded opportunity that they were basically given, but with the Tigers walking 3 guys in a row, and maybe they don't go to Laureson. Here they just keep him into the game so that he can complete the save opportunity and get the save in a 4-run win. So I think, to me, that confirms that we're kind of going closer by committee. And this bullpen, like we said, gave up just 1 hit in 4 scoreless innings, but they're still not throwing like this elite stuff. They're still not getting swings and misses. Laurison's fastball out of the bullpen is at like 92 miles per hour. Anthony Banda is the first guy out of the pen, it seems, which seems a little bit weird, because he has been a good reliever and is probably the most, outside of Taylor Rogers, the most established reliever out of anybody in the Minnesota Twins bullpen, the guy who has had the most success at the major league level. But he's the first guy out of the bullpen. He's got some decent stuff. They go to Lorison. They don't have Zach Kent up in the big leagues anymore, thankfully, a guy who could barely hit 90 miles per hour out of the bullpen. You at least have somebody scratching 92. And Cody Funderburk, who has been up and down, obviously last season had a really good end to the year, has had some hiccups to begin the 2026 season, but they use those guys, and while they're not giving up hits, they're also not striking a ton of guys out. They had 4 strikeouts and they had 4 walks, and right now their strikeout to walk ratio is among the worst in Major League Baseball from just the bullpen. 35 strikeouts to 25 walks. It has been pretty abysmal. They're near the top of the walks, hits per inning pitched. Their ERA right now isn't like phenomenal, but it's not great either. It's not bad either. It's 4.42 after yesterday's 7-3 win. So it's about middle of the pack right now. I think it's 12th or 13th in Major League Baseball in terms of just bullpen ERA. So those are the strict results that you're getting from the bullpen, but the underlying numbers would kind of point to that number that's about mediocre becoming even worse if something doesn't change quickly. So that is, and obviously Mick Abel's big 3-inning piggyback blow up in the game against the Baltimore Orioles kind of plays into that a little bit. But even so right now, it just seems like these Twins pitchers coming out in relief are due for some big blow-ups this year. And bullpens are weird in the sense that you could go all season with a team of league average relievers and put up a top 10 bullpen ERA in all of baseball because they're just coming in at the right time. You get the matchups right for whatever reason, and it's a small sample size, so you only have to see them for like 50 innings, and anyone can throw 50 good innings if you run enough simulations. So sometimes that just happens. But if we're going to like look at the stuff that they're throwing, which is leading to not great whiff rates, not great chase rates, and not great strikeout rates, and really poor control, then I'm going to lean on the side of this bullpen about to fall off of a cliff, which is a little bit scary because that means some of the runs and games that we could be winning now with our improved situational hitting, we now have kind of evened the odds back out and give ourselves about an equal chance to lose with what we can expect from the bullpen the rest of the way. There's been no peripheral numbers to give me any faith that this bullpen will be anything more than a bottom 10 bullpen as it is currently constructed. Now, maybe, again, you get some guys off waivers. You take a flyer on them. They traded for Garrett Acton, who is a seldomly used at the major league level reliever that has pitched for the Marlins and the Rays. And they send Zach Kent down, so they're already making changes to the bullpen in terms of the personnel. But the personnel, as it is currently established, does not give me faith that this Twins team can be super competitive with a bullpen that I think is just going to be pretty horrendous through most of the season. And that can all change, and you still do have guys with stuff. Like Taylor Rogers is still a decent reliever, still a pretty good reliever. Anthony Banda, I like apparently more than Derek Shelton does, and I also like Cole Sands, and I have a soft spot for Cody Funderburk. So I think the foundation is certainly there, and I think you use those guys more as your leverage guys, and you'll see the peripheral stats change a little bit. And I think you could eventually make space for a Dave Festa, although he was placed on the 60-day injured list and won't be available until the end of May. Dave Festa or a Zebby Matthews, or, I mean, probably not Marco Araya with the way that he's been pitching at St. Paul, but like a Connor Prelip, you could get those guys some run in the bullpen if things do take the turn that I expect them to take. I just don't know right now. I guess I don't expect these pitchers to be in the bullpen all season long. I think this is just kind of a start of the year. Let's see who sticks and let's see who can't. and I think we already got our answer on Zach Kent. I don't know if we'll see him back up in a Major League Twins uniform unless there's a lot of injuries throughout the rest of the season, or he makes some significant improvements at St. Paul. But I don't expect the personnel to be what it is throughout most of the season. I also don't know if there are a ton of better options that they will have based on their lack of action really throughout this offseason and the past couple off seasons, and the fact that they traded away all of their good bullpen pitchers at the trade deadline last year, which I still don't think was a bad move. It just kind of hurts them in 2026. I mean, if you can trade Griffin Jacks for Taj Bradley with the way Taj Bradley's been pitching, I mean, I would see that certainly as a win, even if Griffin Jacks does return to his form. So I don't think those trades were necessarily bad, but they certainly hamper what this team can do this year, especially since they didn't, after those moves, go into the free agent pool and really make any big splashes outside of Taylor Rogers, which I wouldn't even say is a big splash and was kind of a late winter, early spring signing. And then, of course, they got like Liam Hendricks and Andrew Chafin, but neither of those guys were able to cut it and make the big league roster. So let's just hope that the personnel improves for the Twins bullpen. Because even on a day where they throw 4 scoreless innings, it can get a little bit too touch and go for my liking. Some other quick notes from this Twins 7-3 win over the Detroit Tigers on Monday. We're hoping that Luke Keeschel and Byron Buxton can start to heat up, and both of them had got off to slow starts to the season, both on their surface numbers with like the batting average and on base percentage, and also with some of their hard hit stuff. Well, we saw Luke Keeschel put a charge into a ball on his home run. Like I mentioned, the guy that was there in a very empty stadium at Target Field, he was in the first row. He got his glove. He caught the ball. Credit to him. But as he caught it, it kind of pushed him back into the bleachers. I don't know if they made note of it on the broadcast, but when you look at the replay, you kind of see this guy catch it. He has like this surprised look, like he's proud of himself, but also didn't know that didn't like expect himself to catch it. And then also then falls not like hard into the bleachers, but gets knocked off of his feet a little bit. And it was just a funny moment if you want to go look it up there. But if you can get Luke Keeschel and Byron Buxton heating up, I think this Twins offense has not even really hit its floor at this point, which is not saying a lot because most of the guys are just not hitting at all. You don't have anybody performing well above expectations except for maybe Victor Caratini, and all the guys that you expect to hit better are hitting lower. And maybe they just hit low like that. They hit poorly the whole season. But if you go by what they've done in the past, that they should regress to the mean, then yeah, this Twins team has not hit what it should be able to do on average on a game-by-game basis. And once Luke Keeschel, Byron Buxton heat up, with both of those guys being righties, it should help them not only just against left-handed pitchers, but in general throughout the rest of the season. Like you have a lot of low batting averages that are probably unsustainable, or at least you hope are unsustainably low, or I guess whatever the opposite of unsustainable would be, because you expect those to all go up. Maybe not for like Matt Wallner, but for like Royce Lewis and for Buxton and for Keeschel. Matt Wallner bouncing back nicely after his 5 strikeout game a couple of nights ago. And then, like I said, Brooks Lee's defense is still horrendous. Like, I don't know how much longer, and he's starting to get like better at the plate. So I don't know how much longer he can play at shortstop. And if there's not really another place for him, like I would rather have Royce Lewis. That if we were to try and move Brooks Lee over to third base, I would rather have Luke Keeschel if we were trying to move Brooks Lee over to second base. Maybe you can move Keeschel into the outfield. They tried working on that this spring, but it just cannot be Brooks Lee at shortstop anymore. He has limited range. He does not have a great arm to throw across the diamond, and maybe that's because I'm just comparing it to seeing Carlos Correa's arm across the diamond for the last 3.5 seasons, and now that I'm seeing something that is significantly slower, it just looks like it is a noodle arm. But I don't see Brooks Lee as a major league shortstop, at least on defense. but that means you would be bringing up somebody like Ryan Creedler or Orlando Arcia, probably in the short term, and hope that Kalen Culpepper or Merrick Houston develop quickly and can get to the big leagues in the long term this season. It just can't be Brooksley anymore, but it's going to have to be at least for a little bit. Tristan Gray, though, the Grand Slam over the weekend, he was playing shortstop. He's hitting the ball pretty well in a pretty limited sample size. Let's hope that now that Brooksley's offense is starting to get back up to form, that his defense can get better, or they find a new home for him. All right, tomorrow the Minnesota Twins will take on Tariq Skubal in Game 2 of the series, the reigning back-to-back Cy Young Award winner in the American League in his final year. Oh yeah, he's also a left-handed pitcher, so the Minnesota Twins kind of statistical anomaly of facing like just as many right-handed pitchers or left-handed pitchers as they do right-handed pitchers, where you usually expect it to be like 1 out of every 5. That statistical anomaly, that outlier continues. It'll be another left-handed pitcher, and not only is it a left-handed pitcher, it's the most dominant left-handed pitcher in the game, besides maybe like Garrett Crochet, depending on where you put your eggs in the basket. Between those two guys, obviously, the baseball voters have sided more towards Tariq Skubal being the guy over the last 2 years. The good thing for Minnesota is that they're going to their pitcher that has the lowest ERA coming out of the rotation, and that is Taj Bradley, whose ERA, I think, entering tonight's start will be about 0.87. He's put up 2 really good starts in terms of the stuff that he's throwing, and it looks like some of that command is being ironed out, or he's able to work around it a little bit more. But he's had 2 really good starts for the Twins, albeit his first one was a little bit short, and he didn't pick up the win in that one. But the Twins have won both of the games that Taj Bradley has started on the mound, including his last one against the Kansas City Royals to avoid the sweep last week. It'll be a matchup between 2 pitchers who have ERAs both under 1 this season. So it should be a fun game, should be a pitcher's duel. I would probably, just because Tariq Skubal's a lefty and is obviously the best pitcher in the American League, I would expect the Tigers to win this one, but let's see if the Twins can steal it and flush the Tigers to the bottom of the AL Central Division. And if they're able to do that, they could, get themselves alone at 3rd place or maybe even 2nd place in the AL Central. It'll be a game out of being 500 and get themselves off to probably a better start than you'd expect for a team that we came into the season with the realistic expectations of winning like 70 to 75 games on average. But if you can get up to 6-7, 7-7, and then start to make a run of it, it's baseball. Anything can happen. So that is going to be it for us here on Twinkie Town Tavern. We will be back tomorrow with some more breakdowns of the game 2 of the series between the Minnesota Twins and the Detroit Tigers. Thanks for joining us today, as that is the last call for Twins Talk for tonight. Thanks for pulling up a stool and joining in on the conversation at the Twinkie Town Tavern. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Go Twins.